So when we look at the techniques that are being employed, we may see a different kind of warfare that's being waged in a particular scenario, and maybe that's the kind of warfare where soldiers are in combat and they're not wearing a uniform, or maybe there's a cyber component or an electronic warfare component, and we're able to look at that and then look across the world and say, hey, we saw this in this area, we see it also applied in this area and this area. How do we develop tactics, techniques, and procedures to operate in that kind of environment? Again, you brought up some great points that talk about how the nature of warfare itself has changed. Relative to the old days when I knew what I was going to be called on to do, and that was to get in my tank or armored personnel carrier and face an enemy and be able to kill him before he killed me. But now the world has changed, and operating in this complex environment, you've got to have the soldiers to be prepared to do numerous missions. And I would hope that you'd find confidence that, hey, there is somebody that is looking at that. And the U.S. Army is looking at what is going on in the world today and preparing our soldiers for the unknown.
And Plato, who said that only the dead have seen the end of war. We can't predict exactly what's going to happen. But I think what you're hearing in the voices of the people who phoned you today is the growing suspicion that the National Command Authority is in the hands of the domestic enemies of the Constitution. My question to you is quite simple and direct. What do you do when faced with an unconstitutional order?
Well, Mike, we've got an obligation to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, and fortunately, I have not had to face that moral dilemma and say, hey, what choice do I make between some order and the parameters as are outlined by the Constitution? And again, I raised my hand and said I will support.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. First thing I want to do is thank Colonel Petkosek for his service. There are three things that I have been hearing here and see here that impress me very much. The first is that citizens are asking questions. The second is that Colonel Petkosek's first response to those questions is that his loyalty is to the Constitution of the United States, and that is what circumscribes his actions. The third thing is that in this world today, we cannot afford to ignore the fact that we may be forced to fight on our own soil.
Hey, this is what our Army is here for. Nothing has changed. This is the same Army. The United States Army existed before there was a United States of America. It is the oldest institution that we have in terms of our nation, and we've been doing the same thing for 200 and some odd years. Whenever we're called, we go. So the nature of what the Army does for the American people hasn't changed, and it's only become stronger.
Chesley, Cape Coral, Florida. Hi, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I would just like to ask the Colonel if he'd care to comment on Operation JADE HELM 2015, and also our participation in Operation Maple Reserve, which will be held in Canada. I think it's ongoing now, and I was also wondering about...
Okay, I'm sorry, the first exercise I'm unfamiliar with, but I am familiar with the Maple exercise being held up in Canada, and that's one of those great opportunities, and I don't know the details of what the exercise and what they're trying to accomplish. I can't speak intelligently about that, but it is one of those opportunities for us to work with our partners, and particularly our Canadian partners. Those things are